Hi everyone, Canadian Gamer here for part two. I finally received the final part, the most integral part of any computer, the processor. It's just a Core i5, but it'll do. 3.2 gigahertz, quad core. So I kind of jumped ahead and installed a bunch of stuff, and don't mind that terrible hack job at the top there. That was a sad attempt at giving it an extra exhaust fan, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to actually get a different case at some point in the near future to help with fitment, and they pretty much all come with exhaust fans at the top. So I've got the graphics card installed. No power, obviously. I don't have the power supply in yet. Teeny tiny little wireless card. Some extra fans in the back. I've got this old fan controller. I'm not sure what kind of fan controlling software this motherboard has, so good old-fashioned knobs, can't go wrong with that. So we'll go ahead and pop in the processor and attach the heatsink. I've actually already got the rear bracket for the heatsink on there, so it's just a matter of dropping it on there and screwing it into place. So I've got this very ghetto rig up here to see if I can get a nice overhead shot of all of this. All right, so processor. So to give you guys a point of comparison, this processor actually comes with a heatsink, but it's pretty tiny compared to what I'm putting on there. The last processor I bought actually came in OEM packaging. It just came with just the processor in a plastic pouch, basically. So so that's the processor that Intel provides you with. So for your old ladies that just check email, that's pretty much all you're going to need is that little guy. But if we put that side by side, let me give you a line it up by sort of by height. So the bottom plates are sort of lined up here, so that kind of gives you an idea of the massive amount of size difference. Heat sinks all sort of work on the same principle. You've got this contact point at the bottom. It looks like they've actually got thermal grease on there, which I touched at some point. They've got thermal grease on there. This particular one has a copper plate and aluminum fins. So the heat from the processor all sort of copper is very conductive, thermally conductive. So the heat spreads out into these fins, and then the fan spins to blow the heat away. So, depending on the design, it basically, the more fins you have, the better. So this actually isn't a terrible design. It's just not very thick. So it doesn't pull the heat very far away from the processor before it blows away. And it actually looks like it blows down. Doesn't really indicate direction, but based on the shape of the fins, it looks like it actually blows down. So it's blowing all the heat down towards the motherboard. Now, with this guy, you've got a much more advanced design. You've still got your plate on the bottom. This has actually got heat pipes. So these pipes, there's a huge gap here. This block is all that really touches the processor, and these heat pipes run the heat all the way up through here and across these fins. And then this huge 120 millimeter fan blows it sideways. So the way I'm going to actually put it on here with these exhaust fans on the back, when I have it on here like this, so it's going to blow all that heat straight out the back of the tower instead of having it blowing down onto the motherboard. So that little heatsink is great for internet surfers and email checkers and Facebookers and things like that. But as far as gaming is concerned, where your processor is under constant load, you're going to be producing a lot of heat, so you need a nice big beastie heat sink like that. Maybe it probably doesn't even need to be that big, but go big or go home. So all you've got in here, you've got a little plastic plate. I don't know how well you guys can see here. Yeah, you got a little plastic plate on here, and that just protects all of these delicate little pins inside. Back in the day, my first computer was an Intel Pentium 4 on a socket 478, and those actually had pins on the processor itself, and the socket had little pinchers, little grabbers. So when you this lever is just a lever. It puts pressure on it, that's all. But the lever on an old Pentium 4 would actually crimp down on those pins to hold it in place. So, I mean, I'm sure it had a great connection, but you risk breaking a pin on the processor. With modern processors, if you can see that, it's just flat. So you're not risking breaking anything on the actual processor. It's a lot cheaper to replace a motherboard. I don't remember how much I paid for that motherboard, but it wasn't $300. So that's it's a lot better. Now, there's always little marking pins or a corner cutoff, or it depends on the processor. They're all different, but that indicates how it sits. So it actually looks like it sits up and down with the text upright. You pop that on there like that, that's on. Now, the CPU cooler came with a little syringe of thermal grease. What that does is there's tiny, almost microscopic imperfections in the surface of both the processor and the heat sink. So this thermal grease will actually fill in all those gaps and make sure that you get 100% or close to 100% heat conductivity between the processor and the heatsink. So I'm no expert there, but from what I've seen, you don't need a massive amount because it's just going to pour over the side, and most of the heat comes right from the center of the processor anyway. So we're going to put a nice big dab of it in the middle. I think that should be good. No, well, nice mess there. So there we go. So our thermal compound is on. Now, the processor is in place. There's a little, watch out for that. Some of these have a little peel off sticker just to keep dust off of here. Now, if I really wanted to go fancy, I mean, I just took this out of the package, so I'm not too concerned about it. But if I really wanted to be fancy, I'd treat all this with alcohol, rub it down, make sure there's no moisture, no specks of dust, nothing, but it should be okay. So basically the way this heatsink works, you've got that big gap, and you've got this little bracket that connects to the four posts on the motherboard. So this guy goes in. I'm going to have to look at the instructions to remember which way it goes in. So I don't want to be shuffling around with this too much. That's AMD. This is like basically a universal heatsink as well, so it fits a lot of different processors. So this bracket is adjustable depending on how. I've already got my pins in the right place. There's 3 different slots on each of these pins for the pin to sit, or for the screw to sit, I guess you'd call it. That would fit different processors. All right, so that's correct. So basically this is just free floating, and there's a little pin and a little guide notch on there. I don't know if you can see in there. Yeah, you can see the little hole and the little pin. So basically this slides in, click that out like this, and it sort of just falls in place. Just like that. So that's in. So I'm actually going to take the fan off as well in order to access the screws on that side. My old processor on my last computer that I built was a Pentium D, and the bracket was really narrow on it, and it was really friggin' hard to get to the pins. All right, processor's in, and retainer plate, for lack of a better term. Everything's lined up. It looks good. Now, for the eagle-eyed viewers, you're going to notice that that thermal grease is already spread around. That would be because I forgot to put that little bracket down. All right, so the cooler is in. All right, good, secure. Pop the fan back on. Where's the socket for the CPU cooler on this motherboard? Right above it. Okay. So pop this guy on. Now, there's no real alignment for this. You just sort of have to eyeball it. Pretty much the top of this plate lines up with the top of the plastic. Just like that. That's actually a little low. Pop it up just a teeny bit. There. Yeah, zip tie right up like that. I'll be getting out of the way. Actually, I've got my zip ties right here. These things are a godsend. I love zip ties. Call me ghetto. I don't know if this is an acceptable use of zip ties for computer building, but I use a lot of zip ties. Throwing these things together. Cutters here. There. They're black. Don't use white zip ties if you're going to use zip ties. Or tie wraps, a lot of people call them. Use black ones. At least they don't stand out quite as much. Okay. So that's in. Put in the power supply. It's nothing fancy. It's just a 500 watt rocket fish. I actually bought this. This hasn't really seen much action. It's been in my server for a couple of days, but anyways, 500 watt rocket fish hasn't seen any heavy loads, so this guy should do just fine. This has an exhaust fan built into it as well. Blows out the nice big grill in the back. Nice blue LEDs on that fan too, which is cool because the case fans are blue as well, but I'm down one case fan because I had to take the one off the side. All right, put that in there. A couple of screws. Just got a big pile of screws on the other side here. I know I'll need them all eventually. There we go. Where'd my Phillips screwdriver go again? I'm terrible at misplacing tools. Oh, that lines up perfectly, just sitting there. And this is also this is a module power supply. Not sure if it's semi or full module. I don't know really what the difference is, but the only cables that are hardwired are the big board power and the ATX 12 volt. Only got one left and the hole's lined up. Okay, it's not going anywhere. That's in there. Okay. So this motherboard is nice and narrow. The other case that I have my server in is it's a lot shorter. So the edge of this motherboard is right up against these drives, so it's really hard to get your fingers in for this power plug, but it's super easy on this case. My new case is going to be much bigger. I've looked into the clearance of this. This board takes both of these. So lower power ones take just the one, but this one actually takes both. That was a cool setup. This case it came with the bracket for this, but the fans themselves I bought separate. I don't even think these are. Yeah, these are lit. I've got blue. No, they're not lit. They just look blue. Also, this will also be my first graphics card with its own power supply. You know what? I'm going to use my zip ties and I'm going to zip tie this thing together so that it basically becomes a single plug. Beautiful. And that's it. this. No, I don't know. I haven't decided what I want to do with cable management yet. Anyways, so that's all in. And the beauty of these modular power supplies is they come with all these little wires. You can choose exactly what you need. That's SATA. I've only got two SATA drives in there, the DVD drive and the hard drive. So I'll need two of these guys. The third one I'll just zip tie to itself or something and keep it out of the way. Little zip ties. And I guess you can kind of see it on the top there. You've got red and black. The red is for PCI Express for the graphics card, and the black one is for all the drives. All right, so put that in as far as we go. In there. I need to deal with these fans. I think I should deal with these fans first. So I've got one in the front, one in the top, and two in the back. It's in. All right, so this cable I can run right along the edge of the motherboard and sort of tuck it in the top there. I think I already got this plugged in. Yes, I do. Yeah, I've already got. Actually, I've already got all these plugged in. 1, 2, and 3. I don't remember which is which, though. Probably 1 in the front. This is 2, and that's 3. It looks like. All right, so don't need to worry about that. I'll leave that alone. Enough reach there? No. And that's where it comes in handy that there's actually 3, because these two are not stretched out enough to reach. So I'll be able to leave the middle one hanging. Unfortunately, this case doesn't have the space in the back. It does. It has enough room in the back for all my wires, but it doesn't have any holes, and I don't have any tools to cut that out. So we're just gonna have to leave all the ugly wires hanging out front. So I've already got my SATA cables running. They're sort of tucked back a little bit, back enough. This machine is not that powerful, so I'm not too worried about wires. So apparently phones are not the best way to record videos. A 28-minute video seems to be the limit, but everything's done. I don't think you really miss much. I've got the power cables all plugged in. I've just threw a little zip tie on there just to hold that back. I don't think it, well, I guess it could potentially get caught in the CPU fan. I don't really want that. Like I was saying, it's not a super powerful computer. I'm not super worried about airflow. I mean, there's plenty of room in there. You've got a fan in the front. You got a big fan there. That's pretty much where the bulk of the heat's going to be sucked out, is through here, and maybe through here. That blows quite a bit of air. So, so yeah, pop the case back on the side and install Windows, and maybe I'll do a video benchmarking or something. I'm not sure. We'll try out the new setup. Make sure nothing's overheating. Make sure that heat sink is seated on there correctly, and yeah, so thanks very much for watching. Oh, and I just realized I forgot something. I'll plug that guy in. I might have a hard time getting a video card running without its power cord. So anyway, thanks for watching. If you like what you're seeing, and if you want to see more, there's going to be a lot more now that I've got this computer built. Like, subscribe, share my page with your friends. So thanks for watching.